Hey you guys, and welcome back to another video. I am so excited that you are here with me. I know this looks different. I have moved to a new place. So last week, Miss Amy really stepped up and helped me out making a video. And I was so glad she got to do that and for y'all to see her. So it was amazing. Thank you, Miss Amy. And today we are continuing our Daniel series. Today we're in Daniel chapter 5, and I am actually really excited about this story because it's a weird one. It's kind of a different type of story that you see in the Bible, and it's kind of scary. And so I'm really excited to dive into it. And so let's jump into Daniel 5. I am going to sort of paraphrase, but not very much. So basically, I'm going to go kind of through the verses and tell y'all what's happening. So the first part, let me give y'all the characters. Okay, so first we have Daniel. You know, we can't have the story without Daniel. But we are not dealing with King Nebuchadnezzar anymore. This story is kind of like 30-ish years after what we've been talking about, after last week's story and everything. So this is when we have King Belshazzar. King Belshazzar is King Nebuchadnezzar's grandson. So that is who's king now, still that lineage, but just a different person. So we are kind of looking at a party. King Belshazzar is wanting to have a grand party because he's the king. He can kind of do whatever he wants. And he's having all of his friends that are princes and royals and the popular folk of the land of Jerusalem. So all the popular people are having a party. This is verses 1 through 4. So during this party, King Belshazzar drinks a lot of wine. He gets drunk, and he drinks basically kind of all the wine. And under the influence, while he's drunk, he makes the very awful decision of getting like gold and silver cups, like chalices, and they are from the temple of Jerusalem, which, as we know, Jewish people in Bible times and now, the temple is so holy and sacred. Anything like that is just not respectful. It is kind of like defiling the very sacred pieces from the temple, and that is kind of the injustice that we're looking at. It's kind of injustice towards God. It's very disrespectful. You just don't do things like that. Like, that is just very shocking. But he's the king. He can also do whatever he wants, and if he really wants to do that, he's gonna do that. And so that's what he did. And then the whole party cheered, drank lots more wine, and it says that they praised the gods of gold, silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Then the weird stuff happens. So I'm going to start with verse 5, and I'm going to just read straight from what I have here. This is Daniel 5, verse 5, and this is CEB version. So it says, "Right then the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the king's palace wall in the light of the lamp. The king saw the hand that wrote. The king's mood changed immediately, and he was deeply disturbed. He felt weak, and his knees were shaky. The king yelled, calling for the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the diviners." So then the king, now we're going to kind of repeat what happened when King Nebuchadnezzar had those dreams that he wanted interpreted. Basically, King Belshazzar is like, I need all these people that I would think could interpret these writings for me. But the same thing happens where they're like, we don't know. We have no idea. But now Daniel has this reputation, and the crowd remembers, all the people that were there at the party go, you know, when King Nebuchadnezzar was here, this guy named Daniel interpreted his dreams when no one else could. So they were like, you should go find him, and he could maybe interpret these writings on the wall. So that's what happened. They found Daniel. Daniel was put before the king and King Belshazzar, and King Belshazzar is like, what does this mean? If you can figure it out, I will give you anything you want. I'll give you gold, I'll give you robes, I will give you popularity, I will make you third in command over Jerusalem. I will give you everything. And Daniel basically says, I don't want any of that. You know, I don't want to be praised for this gift that God gives me. But he does also interpret what the writing said. And the main thing of this is there were 3 words that were said on the walls, and that was the words mene, mene, tekel, and parson. And those are obviously not English, but that also gives the meaning of those words. So mene meant that God has numbered the days of your rule. It's over, is what my Bible says. This is verse 26. Tekel or tekel means that you've been weighed on the scales and you don't measure up. I'm just saying, imagine being told that in front of like so many people and knowing that God wrote those words. Big oof, I'm just saying. And then it says Paris or pere, or mine also says parson, means your kingship is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. So, but then after even though that was very hard interpretation of like not great news for King Belshazzar still commanded that Daniel be praised and given these purple robes, which mean royalty, and have a gold chain around his neck, and officially be appointed as third in command of the kingdom. And that same night, though, Belshazzar was killed. So, on Belshazzar's part. But it's kind of a bummer. But that's how the story ends. So this is kind of one of those weirder stories in the Bible that I really like them. They kind of make it a little out of the ordinary of kind of stories we see. And this is one that we probably don't know a lot or have heard many times. So what I want to correlate our lives or our difficulties and with our relationships with God and this story is sometimes we are like King Belshazzar in the very beginning, wanting to, or maybe not wanting to, but we make mistakes, obviously. But sometimes we make mistakes that are kind of disrespectful towards God. In this example, it was taking pieces from the holy temple and using them for not great things, for drinking way too much wine, and not caring about what they stood for, what they represented, and that was extremely disrespectful towards God. And sometimes we don't stop and think, we want to have fun. We want to do, like Miss Amy was saying last week, me first. And this has a lot of reflection on being selfish. And a lot of times we're selfish, we're humans. And a lot of times what we think about first is ourselves. And we want to think about God, it's not that we don't, it's just as people, a lot of times we're selfish first. And what this story, at least it says to me, is if King Belshazzar didn't do that very first mistake of getting those pieces from the temple and then praising the gods of whatever that aren't the true one and holy God, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And there are some times in our lives where if we had chosen the right thing to do, if we had stopped and thought about what we were doing and how that glorified or didn't glorify God, maybe a lot of things that happened after that, consequences or just events that kind of had a domino effect of just not great turnouts, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And so a lot of this story really kind of shows if you had in the very beginning made a different choice, maybe you would be in a better place. And so go through this week thinking about certain things that you do, certain ways you act or respond to mom or dad. Does that glorify God? Does that help show God through my actions or words? And if it doesn't, maybe we should not do that. It's hard. It's really hard to put anything before ourselves sometimes, but we are called to do that. We are called to not only put God before ourselves, but to put others sometimes. And that can be a really hard challenge, but that's a challenge that we are given by God. And so I hope that y'all think about that this week. And I hope that y'all go and read this story all the way through. It's a really interesting one, and it can really show more than just this example of a lesson. It can have so many other things involved. Like Daniel, instead of taking those gifts or saying, I'm only going to interpret this if I can get X, Y, and Z, instead he says, I don't want any of that. I'll still do this for you, but I don't want any of your rewards. and he just still does the right thing anyways. Let's be more like Daniel. That's kind of the point of a lot of these lessons. If you have one person in the Bible, besides Jesus, that you should be more like, probably Daniel. So yeah, I hope that you'll go give this a read, and I hope that y'all have an amazing week. I know school is starting up for y'all maybe this week, maybe you started, or maybe it's next week, but either way, I am praying for y'all. It is a weird time, and I know it can be really difficult. So I'll be praying for y'all this week, and I hope that y'all have a good week. So I will see y'all again soon.